2024, with a total allocation of 421 billion Malaysian ringgit.
At nearly $98 billion, it's the largest budget in the country's history. Spending plan of $111 billion for 2026. That's the largest ever budget for the country, outstripping this year's $97 billion.
Education is often called the backbone of a nation. Yet, in rural communities, schools struggle with limited resources, outdated facilities, and underpaid teachers. While the national budget promises development and equity, the question remains, are rural schools truly receiving their fair share? In this documentary, we explore where the money matters most. We will ask, how is the national budget allocated to rural education? What challenges do the schools face in accessing funds? And ultimately, are government policies bridging or widening the gap between the rural and urban students? To understand the struggles of rural schools, we first need to look at the bigger picture, the national budget.
Tahun depan, Kementerian Pendidikan menerima 66.2 bilion ringgit. 2 bilion ringgit bagi menaik taraf lebih 520 sekolah daif, khususnya di Sabah dan Sarawak, selain membaik pulih dan menyelenggara semua jenis sekolah, masuk satu sekolah Cina dan Tabil yang daif.
Every year, billions are allocated to education, but how much of that truly reaches the rural heartlands? The gap between policy promises and on-the-ground realities is where the story unfolds. At the center of this issue is the Ministry of Education, or MOE. They are responsible for shaping education policy and distributing funds across the nation. But the money itself comes from the Ministry of Finance, or MOF, which decides how much of the national budget is set aside for schools. Once the allocations are made, local education officers step in. These district-level bodies are tasked with turning policy into practice, ensuring that schools in remote areas receive the resources promised. Teachers, unions, and NGOs also play a vital role. They act as a watchdogs, raising concerns when rural schools are neglected and pushing for fairer distributions of resources. Their advocacy often brings attention to issues that might otherwise be overlooked. And finally, the voices of community leaders and parents cannot be ignored. They live the reality of rural education every day, demanding accountability and reminding policymakers that education is not about numbers, it's about the future of their children. The question is not whether money is being spent, but whether it is being spent where it matters most.
While the national budget promises billions for education, rural schools continue to face chronic problems. Dilapidated buildings, overcrowded classrooms, and lack of access to technologies are daily realities for students in Sabah, Sarawak, and part of Peninsular Malaysia. These issues are not just about infrastructure, but they represent systematic gaps in how resources are distributed. The problems facing rural schools are layered and deeply intertwined. First, there is the issue of infrastructure decay. Many schools operate in unsafe conditions with leaking roof, broken furniture, and overcrowded classrooms that make learning difficult and even dangerous. Accessibility is another challenge. For countless rural students, the journey to school is long and exhausting. Some walk for hours, while others must cross rivers or rough terrains just to reach their classrooms. Teachers' shortage compound the problems. Qualified teachers are often reluctant to serve in remote areas, where housing is inadequate and facilities are limited. This leaves rural schools struggling to provide quality education. Finally, the digital divide. While urban schools move forward with online learning and modern technology, rural students are left behind. Without reliable internet access, they miss out on opportunities that are increasingly essential in today's world. Together, these challenges paint a stark picture in inequality, one that demands urgent attention if education is to truly serve every child in Malaysia. The impact of this problem reaches far beyond the classrooms. Economically, poor access to quality education limits rural student competitiveness, leading to lower productivity and widening inequality. Government suffer as a budget insufficiency, erode public trust, and lack of transparency fuel critics. Socially, rural communities feel marginalized, deepening divides and reinforcing disadvantage. Most importantly, students are denied equal opportunity, awaken the nation's commitment to education as a universal right. The problem is clear. Despite promises of reform, rural schools remain neglected. The implications stretch far beyond classrooms. They touch the economy, governance, and the very fabric of Malaysian society.
When we talk about the current national budget for education, it is the main allocation in Malaysia. It is usually given based on education per se. It doesn't mention about rural or urban schools. However, they did also mention about the funding for rural schools, especially those dilapidated schools.
For this video documentary, we interviewed Maiden Nur Afisha Binti Yusof, a senior lecturer at the Faculty of Administrative Science and Policy Studies, UiTM Sarawak.
Good morning, Madam Fisha. Thank you for the time to meet and allow us to interview you this morning. So first is, can you describe the current national budget allocation for rural schools in Malaysia?
Alright, okay. Thank you for having me for your assignment. Okay. When we talk about the current national budget for education, okay, usually it is the main allocation in Malaysia, other than health and so on. Okay, so education gets a lot of money from the government. Okay. However, when we talk about the education funding, it is usually given based on education per se. It doesn't mention about rural or urban schools. However, they did also mention about the funding for rural schools, especially those dilapidated schools. Yeah? So this dilapidated school usually happens in rural area. Okay? But then again, this does not directly focus on rural area. It says including rural school. There is no specific budget for those in rural school. And when we talk about the current national budget for rural schools in Malaysia, we do not see that it is only based on the education budget. Okay, we can also include those budget for example, under the budget under the rural and regional development budget. So if we can work together, it can increase the funding for this rural school. Those infrastructures such as roads, community development, so that it can top up the budget for rural schools.
All right. And lastly, what measures have been proposed or discussed to strengthen budget allocations for rural schools?
All right. Okay, so the measures along the way through our discussions, I've mentioned about the targeted infrastructure funding. Okay, so all these are part of the measures. Okay, maybe next time when government come out with the funding, it not be in a broad education development. Okay, it needs to be specific funding for what purpose and so on. Okay. Secondly, we can have the special assistance and also the needs-based grants. Yeah? For example, some schools, although they have low enrollment, especially the rural schools, but in terms of the operating cost is high. So all these schools are considered as a unique needs school. Yeah? So we need to not only give broad funding for all these rural schools. We need to look at it in a unique ways, okay, that reflect the unique needs of each of these rural school, especially in Sarawak and Sabah. Yeah? special assistance, all this, what measures strengthen, of course, in terms of bureaucracy process, another measure that if we need to cut some of the red tape so that all this can be smoothly implemented and utilize the fund. Yeah. All right.
Thank you very much, madam, for your time and sharing your thoughts with us. Really appreciate your help and the valuable information for our documentary.
All right. Thank you very much too for having me for your assignment. Bye bye.
For years, we have heard that education is an investment, yet in many rural corners of Malaysia, that investment still has not fully reached the classroom. When we follow the money trail from Putrajaya to a small kampung school, we see how each ringgit allocated or not allocated shapes whether a child has trained teacher, a stable internet connection, or even a safe classroom roof. In this final segment, we turn from problems to possibilities, asking a simple but powerful question. If the national budget truly puts rural school at the center, what will need to change in how we plan, spend, and monitor public funds? To close funding gaps in rural schools, Malaysia must prioritize target investments such as improved infrastructure for hostels and connectivity, sponsored instructor incentive to attract and retain qualified educators in remote regions, and increase virtual learnings of packages tailored to low bandwidth settings. This solution focused on short-term victories such as solar-powered internet hubs and mobile coaching labs, which provide immediate classroom impact without requiring major financial investment.
To conclude, this documentary traced funds from Malaysia's national budget to rural colleges. We observe how billions of dollars are spent on training each year, while rural areas like Sabah and Sarawak receive far less due to poor planning by the Ministry of Training and Finance. Issues include deteriorating buildings, long walks to high school, a lack of instructors, and no internet. Rural schools are memorable because they shape the futures of many children. While investment fails them, it widens inequities in employment, fitness, and political alignment. Finance 2025 allocated 2 billion ringgit for colleges, but without genuine changes, rural college students fall behind. This is more than simply a college issue. It is about fairness, growth, and keeping promises to every Malaysian toddler. Will we let financial numbers remain on paper, or we will demand that they develop genuine alternatives in rural schoolrooms? Contact your MP, share the story, and advocate for equitable investment, because where the money goes determines where the Malaysia's future grows.
Ressens comme un vide, que tu vois que tu le vides. Si chacun sa vie dans la vérité, si chacun sa vie dans la vérité.